Welcome to the Continuing Education module, New Ideas on Engagement and Employee Communications, Promotional Strategies for Wellness. The agenda for this particular module includes the following topics. First of all, the challenge that we face. Secondly, communication planning basics, basic sales process. We are marketeers, core communications planning, the importance of brands, ideas to get your juices flowing, newer engagement strategies, and finally, summary of key points. The challenge in all populations, and you can see the variety of people here, each of them unique, each of them with a unique fingerprint, if you will, or wellness fingerprint, each with their own struggles, their own background, their own characteristics, all of the variety of unique aspects of each of them. And at different points in time, some of them may in fact have decided to move from pre-contemplation or contemplation to preparation in the trans-theoretical model and have decided, I want to do something. So it may be a desire to eat better, it may be a desire to be more physically active, it may be a desire to lose some weight, it may be an issue of changing your tobacco use patterns. It may be the desire to have some health screening, or it may be the issue of how do you use alcohol. Whatever the wellness concern is, these issues come up at different points along the way for different people at different times. And much of our communication is in fact key to how we address the needs of individuals in populations to help them find their pathway and their approach to how they're going to change in a particular area. When we look at the 6 steps that we've used for designing wellness programs, and we look at step number 3, it's the one at which we are looking at how do we in fact communicate, engage, and market to our population. So the 6-step model includes the setting a wellness strategy. That's the choice of one of the 3 models. Secondly is building your infrastructure, your organizational or administrative infrastructure, and the technology or virtual infrastructure. We then are designing our communications and marketing activity. We then are looking for ways to embed measurement and feedback opportunities for our population across all of our wellness activities. Step number 5 is planning group activities, and step number 6 is planning the supportive environment, which is the policy and physical environment around our wellness program. So this particular module really focuses on the issues that come into play as we think about marketing and engagement with our population. Congratulations, you are a marketeer, and marketing is about getting people to change habits, use another brand of product or use a product for a first time, visit a particular store, feel this way about using a particular product or service. So that's what marketing is about, and we are really about that. That is what we are always trying to do in wellness. For wellness to improve health, there needs usually to be a behavior change, but there also needs to be attitudinal change underneath that. There may be skill change that's required to have the new behavior that you saw on that previous slide. It also has to do with how we, in fact, help people engage long-term in behavior change, not just the quick sale and purchase of an item, but how do we in fact help them change their long-term behavior. All good marketing starts by getting into your customer's head. That's what marketing is about. It's understanding the people that we want to affect or to work with. Most employees aren't intrinsically motivated towards wellness. So only about 20% are usually already intrinsically interested in wellness. So for 80% of the people in an employee population, we generally are trying to help them actually engage in wellness, either for the first time or to become oriented or looking at it in a more favorable light. Our programs must overcome entrenched beliefs people have about their health and behavior. Some of those entrenched beliefs are good health behaviors are unpleasant, hard, or costly. So they may look at the healthy behavior like working out or eating in a more healthy way or wearing seatbelts as being hard or costly or unpleasant. Another one of the beliefs that we have to essentially overcome is I won't have to personally bear the costs of my bad behavior in the near term. In other words, I don't have to worry about the consequences of my unhealthy behavior. So if those two tend to be very deeply embedded in most non-intrinsically motivated populations involved in wellness. In addition, we need to be careful as we think about getting into the customer's head that we don't make that most common marketing mistake that is made by most marketers and people who are doing marketing by assuming that the customer is like us. So that's the issue that we need to be careful about as we think about communication, and particularly as we think about how we market these programs, how we communicate these kinds of programs to the people that we're trying to serve. Now let's look at some core communication planning. And first of all, our program brand really includes the name of our program, a logo that identifies our program activity, a tagline, which is a short, quick, pithy statement about our purpose, and graphic standards, which is the way that we communicate, our font choice, our choice of color, our use of diagrams, or our use of whatever communication standards we're using. So those are all part of program brand, a very important part of what we need to do in communicating. Also, with marketing and communication channels, the major ones, one of the most effective is text messages. So that has one of the highest read rates of any of the types of messaging or vehicles that we're going to look at. Voice calls, mailers, etc., those are all different channels. Our messaging calendar is how the messaging changes seasonally and with message frequency. So we're attempting to plot that out as we think about how we communicate with particularly that 80% that are not really motivated to be doing wellness. The importance also of the launch letter, the ability for us to tell people what the program's about and to communicate its basic components. That's in launch letter. And email communications, and that's probably one of our primary vehicles for how we communicate about a wellness program. We're going to be looking more deeply at how to make those emails more effective in a moment. And finally, our biggest challenge in all areas is getting anyone's attention. And that's really the challenge that we have because of all the messaging that is now saturating all of our Wi-Fi, internet, online, email communications. So our biggest challenge in all these areas is getting anyone's attention. Essentially what marketers call mind share. So the mind share of wellness is fairly small in most employees' thinking. So we want to increase that mind share over time, partly through how we structure our programs, but also partly how we set up the communications around those programs. Now let's go back to basics because we want to know about how do we sell wellness. And we can sell wellness to a senior management team, and it's going to include these particular pieces. But at the same time, these principles, these basics are in fact applicable when we think about how to sell wellness to the average employee. So the ways in which we sell things are to identify the rationales for wellness that best fit your organization, and you could take the word organization and put the individual's name in it and say top goals and cultural values. So when we're working with the context of an employee, we really are attempting to find out what do they want, what are their goals, and what are the values which compel them to do various things. Secondly, we're looking at pulling together compelling evidence that wellness delivers desired results with low risk. So that's where we are looking at what is the evidence the individual needs in order to believe that wellness should be something that they spend their emotional time on, their intellectual time on, their behavior of doing. And the third step is creating forums to present this message to key stakeholders, and in this case, keep each employee in a simple way attuned to their known biases. So that's the challenge that we have of being able to take the basic sales process and move it from not just thinking about convincing management that wellness programs are a good idea, but also thinking about how do I use that basic sales process down at the level of each individual employee. Now, program identity, name, logo, tagline, let's do a little deeper look at the brand. And we want the brand to be aspirational. It needs to have, and we're going to look at some of the examples you see on the page and talk a little bit about them in a moment. But a good brand essentially is aspirational, it's friendly, it's easy to remember, it's short, usually avoids acronyms. Acronyms tend to not be used in marketing. They oftentimes stretch the retention capability of the people we're trying to reach. And logo and font design. And we want to think long term. We want to think about something being able to be used for a 10-year period. And branding is hard. You have to borrow from the best and try not to draw a yawn. And as you see these particular examples, you can see that Fitbit, which is a very popular, has the logo that has an aspirational arrow, a movement in it, and the aspirational tagline, small steps, big impact. And then Chipotle, our Mexican grill, is a kind of a friendly aspect to its own approach. And the Mexican grill is essentially the tagline. Fiji water, and that can show you're probably not getting water from Fiji, but we buy it because it means certain things to us. Fiji is the South Seas desirable vacation spot. So that's a part of the example that's used around Fiji water and the way that it looks to us. Airbnb is the online ability for us to contract for housing in various parts of the world through a network that's online. That paperclip kind of symbol just shows us that it brings things together. When you look at the GoPro, which is one of the video recorders that you can take with you very easily. Be a hero, that's the aspirational nature of the tagline. It also shows you a color change going on. So it's movement. So these are all examples of actually pretty good brands approaches, and something that we need to remember related back to our characteristics of that good brand, and also that this is a challenge and you want to try to do the best you can to have something that would almost be a commercial level brand in terms of its quality, and using that in your selection of your wellness program brand. Now, communication channels, email. Let's go deeper into email. Subject line is king in emails. Open rates are usually low. You have to grow them with giveaways, coupons, incentive messaging. So that's the typical thing we're faced with, is we put out an email on a wellness program activity coming up. That subject line is going to be king, and we have to be careful about how we want to grow those open rates. We want to monitor our open rates as well. So you want to track the open rates, find out what works over time. You want to have a very clear call to action. You do not want to send an email out that does not have a call to action. Call to action is just the statement, please do this, please click here, please attend this session, please go to the website and register. So please sign up for your flu shot. So that's a call to action. The email should be pushing folks to measurable actions like a visit to your program webpage. You want to get help in this area by enlisting email marketing members that are doing this usually for products that are offered by most employers. So you generally have either external marketing team or marketing expertise or internal marketing expertise, and you'd like to, and you should be looking to have them help you to make sure your email open rates are good and that information that you're sending out through emails is effectively transmitted to your target population. Now, there's also the monthly, quarterly newsletters, a big part of the wellness playbook, but be careful of publishing very vanilla or what's called me content. So it's be careful about those quarterly newsletters and or calendars. They in fact can be part of what you use, but they need to be something that's readable, memorable, has some clear working capability. And we also want to not abuse our power. Sometimes when we have unlimited email opportunities, we end up with weak content, and that tanks our open rates. And it's hard to get there, to get the attention of employees back once you've gotten very low open rates because you really haven't thought through the quality, the value, the processes and kind of standards you're going to use in your email communications. So in summary, these are some suggestions for you to make maximum value out of your emails to employees as part of the way in which you're marketing and communicating with your employees. Other communication channels, and we've tried to rank some of the major channels that are currently used by their impact. And when you have a organizational leader announcing wellness issues at an all hands meeting, that's one of the highest, most effective ways to get people to recognize wellness issues. Going down the list, what we're going to do is add some comments to these, some general rules as we look at each one of these. And again, they're ranked by a hierarchy of impact. The highest impact at the top, the lower impact at the bottom. Messages delivered by leaders at mandatory all-hands events are most effective in both their ability to be transmitted to the individual, their ability to retain the information, and then to be asked later what was said. That will have the highest and most accurate results. Now, text messages are also extremely powerful. They're more powerful than emails. Emails tend to be read about 30 to 35% of the time. Text messages are usually up in the 75 to 80% of the time. So text messaging is in fact one of our more powerful ways of reaching people in a population. Because smartphones and cell phones and text messaging is now up in the 90s and 90% of our employees have them, that's now a method that we should be using as a standard approach. Those text messages are powerful, but they often require an opt-in process where the individual has to agree to receive the text messages. The next area are mandatory online videos, and those are part of a learning management system. So when we put content, wellness content into learning system modules, that LMS can drive the mandatory videos that introduce wellness programming because it usually is the way that employers are now packaging much of the informational content that they want to get across to employees. So they're either renting an LMS or they're purchasing an LMS or they build out their own LMS. And that's going to be one of the major ways that we actually distribute information about wellness in the future. The fourth method is cascaded emails from supervisors, and that's where your supervisors, key supervisors, you're asking, can I in fact cascade emails? If I send them to you, will you send them on to others? That can be done in some very efficient kinds of ways. So the cascaded emails have higher open rates when our leaders cascade messages to their direct reports and on down the chain. So that's another kind of strategy to use for emails that allow us to use them in a cascaded kind of way. The next item ranked by impact is printed posters. So posters can be very effective, but make sure that they are not cheesy, particularly where we place the posters. So if people are seeing them and if they're changing them out weekly or bi-weekly, so that people are not becoming relatively insensitive or numb to the messages. So that's another issue. We want some movement, some change, but we need to make sure that they're not cheesy. The next area is the program website, number 6. But without other promotion or incentives or reasons for people to visit the website, then employees won't just go to the website. Most of us have learned that the hard way. So we can put all kinds of things in the website, but unless there's some strong perceived utility on the part of employees, they will not visit the website. The next area, number 7, is newsletter inserts, and that's where we put in a wellness column, for instance, in our employee newsletter. Well, if the employee newsletter is not read by a lot of people, then it's even less are going to read the wellness insert or the wellness column in our newsletter. So generally, messages inserted into other communications, like an HR newsletter, unless it's very highly read, usually will not work well. So that's one of the things to just be aware of in terms of newsletter inserts. And finally, the employee handbook, that last issue there, is one of the least effective, but it's also important that it contains a number of references to wellness, because that communicates when people do read it, when they have a need to read it, they end up seeing the wellness message. And finally, we want to build awareness, but it's tough. So we still need to be in several of these channels, so in several of these vehicles, so that because of the relatively low level of email open rates. So unless we are up in the 80s and 90% open rates on our emails, we have to rely on many of these other forms of communication. So that's our challenge as we think about how we engage and communicate with employees around wellness issues. Now, one of the things that can also organize our communication activities is a communication calendar. And you really see Let's Rock Acme communication calendar, Acme Company. That just gives you an example of some of the kinds of things you could put into a calendar structure. And it can either be written for the end user, the consumer or employee, or it can be used for your own planning purposes. So you have to decide that. You want to ensure your key programming milestones have strong awareness. So when you're going to bring in a speaker or have a health fair or do a preventive screening or have a walking program kickoff, you want that milestone to be strongly perceived and understood by your population. So part of your calendar approach is to help that happen. You also want to make your messaging seasonally relevant. So I want to get the boost of seasonal interests that occur around. And you might see that, by the way, in that box in the middle that says nutrition interest, holiday feasting. So that would be using a seasonally relevant message that where most people are concerned about weight gain when it comes to the holidays around the end of the year. So New Year's resolutions, getting beach ready, becoming active for the weather, whether it's indoor, winter, or winter sports like skiing or snowmobiling or cross-country skiing or snowshoeing, holiday eating, etc. So you're using those seasonally relevant messages and using that to boost interest. And you also are rationalizing your efforts with that calendar. So you're spreading them out and showing people where and what is coming. And you want to help refresh messages that are focused on a specific activity by having some other either newer activities where you issue a calendar to remind people and refresh their memories about specific issues. Seasonal relevance is a freebie for employee engagement and can jumpstart your creativity. So use the seasonal relevance issues like the ones in the bold in the middle of the graphic and the slide to jumpstart your creativity around wellness communications. Now, a communication calendar frequency issue is in this particular area. And by the way, the number of times an employee sees your message is what marketers call the frequency. So you want to have a fairly high frequency because many of our exposures are not effective exposures, they're ineffective exposures. The exposure came and went, but I didn't notice it as a user or as an end recipient of the message. Awareness requires each employee and spouse to see your messages many times. So we can't just do one kind of announcement and expect everyone to somehow remember or be on board. It takes multiple exposures. A rule to live by in marketing is key messages need 10 plus exposures. So that means that we can actually organize that in a variety of ways, but one of the things we want to do is to look for ways to get multiple exposures to our population. That's why posters on the back of the bathroom stall door would be a multiple exposure kind of method for communicating. You can think about 3 by 3, 3 message exposures in 3 channels, and that's designed to get you up near that 10 plus exposures. So if you just think of 3 different vehicles and 3 different times that those are expressed, that's a way to get you up around the 10 exposure level. And physical posters are a good element for frequency if they're placed in places where people are going, but don't just put the poster up and leave it for longer than a week or two. You want to have movement with those things so that people are noticing, so that they're not tuning out around the wellness issues. So you have to move those in order to have them actually be effective. Otherwise, they tend to show that it's not very high value because they don't see anybody doing anything or changing the messaging. And we also want to combat the noise of so many competing messages that are coming at us from all different directions by increasing the frequency around our wellness messages to drive program awareness. So we want people to be aware of what the wellness program is doing. We therefore want to be able to have multiple messages, and we increase the frequency to drive program awareness. Now, what you see here are some examples from WebMD that have to do with a poster and with a key message and then some description, and it's really promoting the taking of a health risk assessment or a well-being assessment called the health quotient. And it gives you the opportunity for people to see what messages they then get later on an email or they get into an HR portal ad. So there's lots of different ways in which we try to structure the call to action to actually get them to do the thing that we want them to do that really engages them in wellness. So these posters and email insert and HR portal ad are in fact some key ways of being able to communicate our messages, and they really give us the example of multiple frequency messaging. And that multiple frequency then increases our program awareness and use. Now, some of the pitfalls we want to avoid, the biggest communication problem is boring messaging. And one of the things that we oftentimes don't do is we kind of do very vanilla wellness communications, and that can be very boring to our employees. We tend to be too conservative with messaging, not wanting to try out things. And we also need to get more attention grabbing in our messaging because it is essentially a free participation driver. So what we need to be doing is looking for creative communicators, people who can take our message content and actually wrap it in something that people notice. So that's our biggest communication problem in wellness, boring messaging. And there's some things that we can do, which I'm going to show you, that will add some, get your juices going around being creative with messaging. Now, the ideas to get your juices flowing include coupons and offers. The first 3 who sign up will get coffee with the CEO or a vice president or the vice president of HR. But using something like that that changes up how you're approaching people. You can have and ask for teams with the highest participation get a chair massage that's brought into their particular location. You can use humor, and that's using a caption like the cat pictures that you see on the right-hand side of the slide, and the monorail cat brings the wellness. Authenticity, get an exec to tweet about their weight loss process linking to your program. And fun entertainment. You can play a funny YouTube video after a sign up. If the video is good, it will generate some buzz. So if you're careful about what you select and provide to people as a YouTube video, it can reinforce some issues in wellness, but it also can be an entertainment opportunity. So I've used all of these to enhance wellness communications. They all work. You just need to work them periodically and regularly in terms of building up your program's ability to increase its marketing effectiveness with the population you're trying to reach. Another strategy here that I've worked pretty well is to tap class clowns. So all of us come from high school. We all have class clowns. We have people that think out of the box. You find some of those marketing people and others that are the class clowns to get greater creativity. It isn't all on you. So what you can do is actually ask some people, you can give them copy that you write and that has content in it. They can turn it around and put it into something creative. So that's how I would suggest you approach the communication activity of your wellness program to make it more effective in helping employees engage and participate in the programs that you offer and the activities you offer. Now, let's share some thoughts on engagement. First of all, engagement is active. It's not a passive process. Engagement requires an active involvement, and that active and cooperative involvement in programming. So when we think about a set of offerings that are interventions that we've offered and structured for a population, we want those interventions to cross the line into engagement. And engagement requires that active involvement of the individual and a cooperative involvement in the programming itself. And culture is vitally important to that. It's what we think other people think of our involvement in the wellness program. So that cultural norm issue is very important when we come to think about engagement. In addition, consistent management messages are critical to the process of engagement. We need to have a stable base of support and forward-leaning messaging coming from our key executives. Incentives are also key because we have a relatively low level of intrinsically motivated people for wellness. We really need to have the extrinsic motivation that helps people get to that point of involvement and engagement. Participation is made to be a natural act. It's just something that we all do. It's the way we do things around here. Communication is a primary catalyst for engagement, but must be personalized. So that stretches our ability to take our interventions and make sure that they are, in fact, personalized to the individual's needs, perceptions, preferences, readiness to change. When possible, enrich your communication with the employees and people that you're trying to reach, and enrich that with music. So music has a very attractive and strong pull for most people. So our ability to communicate and to engage people through music, chosen and selected, is an important part of our strategy. And we want to personalize as much as possible whenever we can, but also we want to bring people to aspire to something higher. So the ability for us to reach a higher interest level or a higher issue of concern to people, but kind of pointing in the direction, maybe a personal excellence would be a way of aspiring to something higher. The ability for you to look at kind of some of the virtues of human behavior. That would be an aspiring to something higher. So these are some thoughts on engagement that we hope you will help you get a handle on this issue to be able to have your communication activity actually really help open the door to greater engagement with your employee population. Now, a summary of key points for this particular module is wellness people need to realize they are marketeers. Don't make that most common marketing mistake of all, assuming the customer that you want to reach is like you. They're not like you. Very few of them are like you. Your biggest challenge in all areas, getting their attention in the sea of messages and noise. Borrow from the best when creating your program identity and branding. All communication vehicles vary in their effectiveness and efficiency, and trade-offs are unavoidable. So we're always going to have, not have all of the communication opportunities that we want. We have to just accept that. A communication calendar helps you manage your efforts and highlight key dates and seasons and seasonal issues. Each key message has to get repeated to generate awareness within a large percentage of your target population. So unless we are repeating the messages, we're not likely to be getting very high level of awareness. So then we get a lot of statements from employees, well, I didn't know that was going on. Nobody told me about it. That's going to happen anyway, no matter how many times you're telling people, but it's going to happen less as you increase your frequency. Boring messaging is likely to be your biggest communication problem. As soon as you are perceived as boring by employees, they essentially turn off. Get help keeping your messaging and ideas and engagement fresh. Don't just recycle last year's communication. Do some real change-ups. And engagement requires work. You've got to work these issues in order to enhance or improve engagement with your employees. So in summary, these are some of the key points from this particular module. Now, let's also look at some key questions. Our first question is, how can I spice up our wellness messaging? And there are a number of different strategies. You can use humor, and you can actually find out those people that tend to cause others to laugh and write things that are funny. You can use humor to do that. You can use a gentle sarcasm. I wouldn't use a hard-edged sarcasm, but you can also use a more gentle form of sarcasm. You can use parody, where you are creating a parody about something in wellness. You can use a first person where you're talking to people as if you are talking directly to them and you're sharing your own view from a first person perspective. You can use a mascot and have that mascot have characteristics that contribute to your program's purpose and orientation. You can use a robot speak. So depending on what your culture is like, you can have some discussion of how a robot would contend with some of the stuff that you're talking about in wellness. And you can get some creative communicators. So the idea that you look for people that are very creative and you harness their gift, their skills, their capability to actually help you communicate more effectively. The next question is, how does a large incentive reward affect communications and promotion efforts? My experience has been that it lessens the communication need. So if the incentive reward is large, and I usually recommend somewhere in the area of $600 to $1,200 annual reduction in premium contribution as being a very reasonable area for you to work or work toward or work with. And that's what I would call a large incentive reward attached to a number of different wellness participation issues and wellness achievement, or what are called health contingent or outcome issues. So that's the ultimate, I think, is really getting to that level. And that lessens greatly the communication need because there's more buzz going on around the specific times during the year when that incentive activity is underway. In addition, it energizes the communication. So that large incentive reward actually adds some energy to your communications. It can help order them because you are then helping people, notifying them of the start of the incentive qualifying period, and dealing with their sign up and all of the other issues which come into play. And it also provides a strong focus. So those are all things that change and affect how much communication activity you need to do when you are offering something like a large incentive reward around a variety of wellness criteria. And the third question is, how frequently should your average target employee or spouse see your key messages? And my general recommendation is that you see that once a week they get some sort of wellness message. But there needs to be a strong call to action, vital information provided in the email, and you need to have change-ups. You need to change the messaging, change the dates, change the length of time. There needs to be change going on. So that frequency, as a general rule, once a week is what I recommend. But at the same time, you also need to be doing those other things in order to make that weekly message powerful and strong. Now that you've completed this module, go ahead and take the quiz.